All right, so I'm going to keep building up this base color. And this first step is all about getting rid of the white space, filling it in, even when it looks white, choosing a color. Now I'm painting at about 62%. If I don't feel it's going fast enough, I might up my opacity a little bit. And the key is just not to get sucked into details. Because you really don't know what colors or what final edge solution you're going to end up using. But as you go, you are improving your observations. And you might find a really good kind of local base color. Like I like this cream for the beard. I need to find ways to vary it that are interesting. Don't forget that grays are really good color options. And then I'll usually like to throw in some just weird color choices as well to adapt to. And I do a lot of squinting, making sure I have the darkest darks accounted for. And he's got these nice wrinkles. I'm sure I have them in my sketch, but I want to make sure I kind of choose the right value, the right color of them for this. So the higher opacity you go, the quicker it will fill up, but the less the colors will blend together. So it's a trade-off. And we all get sucked into the parts of the face that are the most interesting, like the eyes, the mouth. We tend to do things like the ears last. And that's why I like this kill whitey approach. You're just trying to cover all of it before you get into any detail. For your final project, we'll talk a lot about what it means to bring finish to something, to really consider all parts of it. This is just an introduction to digital painting, but if you're able to treat all edges, then you can bring a level of finish to this, which will be very satisfying, even if you don't get to work on it for as long as you would like. All right, so we're getting there. As I'm working kind of just by the practice of choosing colors, I'm figuring out what the tones of the face are going to be, how the color works and how the lighting will work, how much I'm matching the photo and how much I'm doing my own thing and being inspired by the material. I don't have to worry about going inside edges, like if I were doing digital coloring behind line work. I don't have to worry about flatting. I just do a lot of brush strokes. And each one hopefully shows my own take, my own personality a little bit. So it makes for a better digital painting. Now in the thin parts of the face, like around the eyes, in the membranes of the ear, the nostrils, red is often a good accent color because it kind of shows the blood coming through the skin. So often use some red to frame the eyes a bit. Helps them pop, to handle some of the wrinkles in the ears. But there are lots of different reds. Some of them are very dark values. So when you squint, they can be incredibly dark, like 70% gray in a red. And I might even drop something like that into the pupil that will get worked with and painted over later, but will help inform something a little bit more interesting. It's always hard to know where the pupils are looking, and I like how he's kind of looking off and away. Maybe as a symbol of his creativity, so I'm going to try to keep that. But so much of that just has to do with the eyes being spaced correctly. Doesn't have much to do with the detail of how you draw the eye or the pupil and cornea in the eye. Now do try not to draw with just straight or paint with just straight black if you're using color. It's always good to give it some color note. So his jacket, I want it to be fairly dark, not nearly as dark as it is in the photo. And I want it to pick up some of those color accents for sure. But mostly I need it to be dark to frame this white beard. So this purple is nice. And because I have that scatter turned on, I can fill a lot of this in really quickly. Now I have my sketch behind it, which is nice and soft. So even though I'm working right on top of my sketch, it's not cheating. It's just like if you were to sketch on a canvas. It's not cheating in the same way that rotoscoping on top of a photograph is. Even though I warped this sketch and worked with it to make it a little bit better. That's just the advantage of digital imaging. So you can get your digital painting any way you choose. By hook or by crook, but customizing brushes, working from general to specific, layering up on top of base colors, not working behind outlines. These are the things I'll be looking for. Now the other thing is, how do you define the edges of white hair without a dark background? And that's why we're not doing backgrounds for this. So you can think of the challenges of painting objects. Let's see. Okay, so at this point, I have a lot of details in, a lot of values built up, not a whole lot of, what's the word? Not a whole lot of the empty space is filled in, though. And that's because those color selections are a little bit harder to just make on the fly. Especially when you just have a black and white photo to respond to. But you got to do it. That's the kill whitey part. We got to fill these things up. So at this point, I'm going to turn off. Actually, I'll do something else. Instead of turning off my sketch, I'm going to unlock it and I'm going to set it to multiply so that it overlaps with my gray, and then lock it. And that will help me choose the values that go over the top of the sketch. to fill this in. But it will also mix a little bit of gray with some of my colors. Wing of his ear showing there. So one definition of painting that makes it separate from drawing is that painting is shape-based and drawing is primarily line-based. So if you find that you are trying to outline everything in your digital painting, you're kind of doing it wrong. You're making your life more difficult than it needs to be. Instead, you just want to kind of build up shapes and then modify them with the new strokes you put down. And we'll build up on top of this base layer with lower opacities and tighter brushes when we need them. On and on. Right now, you're just trying to give yourself enough coverage that you can react to later. So you don't need to worry about mistakes or painting over something, because it's all going to get kind of worked on top of eventually anyway. But when you squint, you should be able to kind of make out the shape of the face and the lighting. That's what's most easily lost. Some of the cyan for his mouth. That with the red, yeah, that kind of works pretty well. You'll notice that the computer will kind of slow down on you sometimes after each stroke. When that happens, it's a good time to save and make sure you don't have a lot of other programs open. Because every time you touch your canvas, I'll save it here, it's creating a history for it. That's why we save around 500 history states. That's as far back as I can now go. And that's probably all just within the last 10 minutes or so. Those history states. So the computer's having to work really hard to remember everything we're doing. And why do we need it to? Well, if we're painting on the wrong layer or something, we're going to really appreciate that we have that history turned on. It's always safe to make new layers. So I tend to do that a lot when I'm digitally painting. Just like in real painting, you don't try to do it all in one go. You do some, you let that dry, and then you layer over the top of it. This is no different. So before I get seduced into being